This week on True Crime Travelers.
A young man is seen on surveillance footage, sprinting through a Bulgarian airport, glancing over his shoulder as if something or someone is chasing him. And then he disappears into the distance, never to be seen again. Who was Lars Mittank running from? And why hasn't anyone seen him since?
Welcome to True Crime Travelers, where we investigate suspicious murders and disappearances around the world, but from a traveler's perspective. We are Alexa and Emilia, award-winning travel experts and the authors behind the Solo Girls Travel Guide book series. We are obsessed with safety and true crime, but I promise we're not here to scare you. We're here to prepare you.
Dobro utro, Milichka.
Oh my God.
Zdrasti.
Oh my God. For those of you who don't know, this güera gringa, you would never imagine that she speaks fluent Bulgarian.
Not fluent, conversational sometimes, depending on the day.
Depending on the day. But yeah, I feel like that is the randomest fact you could give someone about you.
Yeah. So I speak Bulgarian. Говорю по-български. I lived in Bulgaria for a few years after college when I joined the Peace Corps. I joined the Peace Corps after college. And for those of you who don't know, the Peace Corps is an American volunteer organization. And they send volunteers abroad, depending on like their skill set, for 27 months to volunteer with the Peace Corps in really like rural, rugged places. And they could have sent me to the Philippines or to Thailand, or they could have sent me somewhere where I could like speak fluent Spanish. But no, the Peace Corps sent me to Eastern Europe, to Bulgaria, a post-communist country. And now I speak Bulgarian, which is the most useless language ever because only like 8 million people speak it or something like that. So when I lived in Bulgaria, I lived in villages and small towns. And eventually I lived in what Bulgaria calls a city, but y'all, it was not a city. It's called Pazarjic. It is not a city. It is like it's a town. So I know this country and this culture very closely, very intimately, behind closed doors, in seedy areas. I know this country and culture, and I'm so excited to do this case because, like I said, Lars Mittank, his case is one of the most mysterious on the internet, and it happens to be in a country that I know. So let me tell you about Bulgaria, Emmy. Let me tell you about Bulgaria in this way. So in the Peace Corps, when we are given our assignments, so a bunch of volunteers, we go over together and we're given our assignments. And by assignments, I mean they tell us where we're going to be for the next 2 years. And they do it really cleverly. They drew a really big map of Bulgaria on the ground in like a parking lot. And then they took us by the hand and put us in our respective locations. They took me by the hand and they walked me to the very northwest corner near Serbia, like near nothing. And then my friend, who was like my favorite person in like the pre-training for the Peace Corps in Bulgaria, her name is Hannah. They walk her over to the very west coast and they place her in the best location in terms of fun. And they placed her in a town called Varna, Bulgaria. And that, my friends, is where our case takes place today. So Varna is like the beach town in Bulgaria. While I was like, eating dinner with babas, like grandmothers who grab krastavitsi, like cucumbers from their garden, in Varna, you actually have a McDonald's and an H&M. And there's like tourists. Like this is a real town. I lived in like communist block apartments, and Varna is the western window to the rest of Europe.
Honestly, I think you got the better experience.
I do too. And I will say about the town, you don't really go to Varna because like the water is gorgeous. You go to Varna because it is cheap. Varna's nightlife is the big major draw. So they have bars and clubs and restaurants and cornflake chicken. If you ever go to Varna, if you ever go to Bulgaria, try cornflake chicken. It'll blow your mind. Varna is the place where the events and the festivals come, such as the Varna Summer International Music Festival. But really, there's a lot of casinos. There's a lot of strip clubs. There's a lot of, prostitution. there is a seedy underbelly in Varna, like most big towns. But we're talking about Bulgaria. We're talking about laws that only apply to people who are planning to get caught. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But as usual, Varna is really safe if you don't go looking for trouble.
As it happens with many destinations.
Exactly. So that brings us to today's case. The group of party boys that we're talking about today are a group from Germany. And our mystery man, his name is Lars Mittank, a very handsome young man in his 20s. Lars was born in 1986, and he was an only child, very close to his parents. He is really pretty. He's like One Tree Hill handsome, you know? Like strawberry blonde, chiseled jaw, rockin' body, boyish face.
Well, now I'm picturing Chad Michael Murray.
He looks like Chad Michael Murray, if you ask me. And Lars was really into fitness and keeping his mind and his body clean. He worked at a power plant 100 miles away from home in Germany. But this is the kind of guy he was. He came home almost every weekend to help his mother take care of his father who had had a stroke. His mom takes care of his dad full time. So, Lars is in his 20s. He's got a really good head on his shoulders. He is healthy. He has a good relationship with his parents. He's responsible. And so when his friends were like, hey, Lars, we're all going to Bulgaria. We're going to the Black Sea for a vacation. His mom almost had to be like, Lars, go. You need to go. You need to have fun. And he was like, all right, I'm doing it. So the boys, they fly to Varna and they check in to a resort in kind of like the hotel area called Golden Sands. It's technically its own little world, but it is part of Varna. And this story very much has a lot of ties to the center of Varna. So let me just walk you through how this trip went. On day one, on July 8th, 2014, so like the height of summer in terms of tourism and heat, Lars and 5 of his friends, they land in Varna, Bulgaria for a week-long vacation. The boys had 4 days of fun without incident, partying and swimming. And these boys, as most European men are big football fans, and it was the time around the World Cup. So they're out and they're watching games and stuff like that. So the boys were partying and swimming and having a great time. But Lars's friend Tim did note that Lars wasn't eating much, especially not compared to his friends. But his friends, right, they love like a good late night McDonald's. And Lars was kind of on a health kick. So he's like eating soups and salads and kind of eating sparsely. And his friend Tim, though, did note like, hey, man, like, what's up, So all of those days go by just fine. But then on day 5, an incident occurs.
Chan, chan, chan.
Here's what you need to know about young German men, including Lars. They are typically hardcore football fans. And by football, I mean soccer. And Bulgarians are too. Bulgarians are obsessed with soccer as well. And I mean, these people are like really dedicated to their football clubs. They will fight. There are hooligans. I had a Turkish boyfriend once. It was like a football hooligan, it turns out. He had to show me like YouTube videos. And I was like, he's like, it's political. And I was like, what the hell is this?
People live soccer very intensely and very deeply.
Yeah. Hardcore fans. So yeah. And then during this week, it was actually the World Cup in Brazil.
Oh.
Yeah. So on day 5, the crew, they go out to a bar and they're watching the Costa Rica versus Netherlands match. And there were a ton of other travelers and locals there wearing their jerseys of their teams. And, people look at each other and like, hey, I don't like your team, even though it's not your team whatsoever. And you just bought the thing. And so, guys drinking jerseys, they get into it. So apparently Lars is confronted by some Bulgarian high school guys because Lars was wearing the jersey that was the rival of their club. Okay, something is weird here for me. Now, this case has been covered so many times on the internet, and I have watched so many videos. I have read so many things on this, so many articles. And this is another reason why Emmy and I do this podcast, is because there are things that people breeze over that Emmy and I would not breeze over as travelers. So Emmy, they're all out that night. The entire group decides to go back to their hotel, but Lars stayed out alone. That's just why. I just don't know why he would do that.
Was he meeting up with a girl?
It has never been written that he was, but maybe he was going out looking for a girl. I don't know. But anyways, his friends don't see him until the following morning. And in the morning, when they see him the next day, he looks disheveled. No cuts, no black eyes. But here is what Lars told them happened. He said that he was out in Varna walking around when he was jumped by a group of 3 men, which Lars was convinced were tied to the high school hooligans from before. Because apparently in that verbal scuffle, they shouted, "It's easy to get someone to beat you up in Bulgaria. Like, we can hire someone to jump you." So that night, Lars is jumped by 3 men. And he says that, this guy went to go punch him in the face, but Lars kind of swiveled, and instead he takes a huge hit to the ear. It is a horrible place to get hit, and it was so hard that it perforated Lars's eardrum. Lars now needs a doctor, and remember, he's supposed to get on a plane. And ear problems on a plane are terrible. In Europe, for my American friends, just so you know, you can see a doctor quickly and cheaply. So Lars doesn't know what I know from firsthand experience, that doctors in Bulgaria don't always give a shit. They just don't give a shit. So Lars seeks medical attention, and he goes into this doctor, and apparently there's 2 doctors that he sees on this day. One won't treat him. He's like, "You need a specialist." And the other doctor, the specialist, refused to speak to him in English and was like mocking him. But anyways, Lars leaves with a prescription for an antibiotic called cefprozil. And I don't know why the internet is so obsessed with this antibiotic. They're like talking about the antibiotic. It's so important. 500 milligrams, huge high dose. This is just an antibiotic. The side effects are not insane. It doesn't really mess with you. The most it's going to do is like give you an upset tummy, give you an allergic rash. And Lars didn't have any of these side effects.
But why get an antibiotic for a broken eardrum?
Preventative.
Okay.
So it is day 6. And this is the day that Lars is supposed to leave and his friends are leaving. But he believes with his ear, he should not fly. So he's like, I'm going to just stay here for a few days, not to risk it. Let's see, maybe there's swelling. I don't want to risk it. It's an ear. And his friends are like, hey, we'll stay with you. Lars is like, no, guys, don't worry about it. I got this. But spoiler alert, Lars didn't got this.
Oh no, I can see where this is heading. This sounds like a terrible idea. And I wish his friends had stayed with him.
I wish they had stayed with him too. And unfortunately, this is a decision that his 4 friends, I am sure, regret and think about every day of their life because they would never see Lars Mittank again. Want to travel with us? Every summer, Emilia and I take small groups of women away from the daily stressors of life in what we call river therapy. Imagine whitewater rafting in the most stunning locations across the USA, completely off the grid for up to 5 days, designed specifically for women who need a soul reset. Bring your stresses, anxieties, and fears. Bring your dreams, wishes, and goals. And join us for river therapy. Go to alexa-west.com and click on Glow Up Travel to join our next trip. Lars's friends had left. Now Lars is in Bulgaria all by himself, which is fine. It's not a scary place. Everything's going to be fine. Especially he's in Varna and he's at this really nice resort. However, because it is peak tourist season, they don't have a room for him. He's supposed to check out and they're like, hey man, everything's booked up. So he's got to find a hotel. So he asks a taxi driver to take him to a hotel. He just goes outside and he's like, hey, need a hotel. And, Lars, it was 2014. You and I have talked about we know from the Amanda Knox case, iPhones were invented in 2007. Yeah. So he does have a phone. But he left his smartphone in Germany and he just has a clicky phone. So he doesn't have a laptop. He's not going and searching, right? He's just going out and he says, hey, taxi driver, can you take me to a hotel? Doing it the old school way. And this taxi driver is hanging out in the tourist zone, tourist area. So the taxi driver likely speaks English, yada, yada, yada. So Golden Sands, the area that they're in outside of Varna-ish, is 30 minutes north of the city center. So the taxi driver doesn't just find him something in there. The taxi driver drives him 30 minutes down into the very city center of Varna. And he takes him to a hotel called Hotel Colors. In between all of this, checking out from Golden Sands, going down to Hotel Colors, in between all of this, he's texting his mom and calling his mom. And they're in close contact. So much of what we know about this case, we know from Lars's mom. According to her name is Sandra, by the way, as the days unfolded with Lars in Bulgaria alone, Lars's anxiety escalated. He became increasingly convinced that he was being followed, chased, and stalked.
That's creepy.
Lars told his mom that he had been seeing suspicious individuals following him. Despite his mother's attempts to calm him down and assure him of his safety, his paranoia only intensified. So remember this. Here's another thing that I hate that people don't piece together. People just rush through this story. We're slowing it down. Lars, okay, checkout time of a hotel is what time?
11.
Yeah, 11, 12, something like that.
12 if you're lucky. In Europe, I can say that it's 8 out of 10 times 11 a.m.
Okay, so he moves 11 a.m. He moves down from Golden Sands and he goes to Hotel Colors. Let's say they don't let him check in till 3 at the latest, worst case scenario. He gets into his hotel at 3 o'clock, okay? The weird stuff I'm going to start telling you begins at 11 p.m. So from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., what was he doing? Was he in his hotel room, peeking out the curtains, locking the doors, turning his phone off, turning the shower on? What was he doing in the hotel room? Because he was getting so paranoid that by 11 o'clock, he calls his mother. And this is when the crazy phone calls begin. The first call, he tells his mom, "Mom, block my credit card." He said, when I checked into this hotel, they made a copy of my card. You know, one of those like chunk chunk things? They made a copy of my card.
That's so 90s.
It is so 90s. But in Bulgaria, they're living in communism time. Listen, they're post-communist, but things are still taking a while to catch up, especially in 2014. So he is all paranoid that happened. And I will say that while that isn't like standard, I would say for Bulgaria, that is perfectly normal.
They don't want you to leave without paying.
Yeah, like a dine and dash at a hotel. So they chunk his card. But he is like, I think that this guy or these men, they might be trying to steal my identity or my finances. So he's like, cancel the card. And when I get home, I'll reinstate it. She's like, okay. I mean, and you know what? It's not outside the realm of possibilities, but.
No, I mean, I think it's like a fair, normal paranoia to have, I guess.
Right. If all of his other behavior wasn't weird, and let's say you did this, I'd be like, okay, she's being extra safe. That's fine.
Yeah.
But then there's another call to his mother. Again, Lars is like, I'm being followed. My life is in danger. These guys are after me. They're going to get me. Then another call. Lars tells his mother that he has left the hotel. And this is in the middle of the night. He says that he is hiding on a hill.
What?
Yeah, he's like, there's 4 men chasing me. Don't call me back because I don't want my phone to ring. And, he's on his clicky phone, but he's like, don't call me back. Then he sends his mother a text and he says, what is this antibiotic, cepha, whatever?
Oh.
Which means that he's there being like, he's like, I've taken 3 of these pills. He took 3. And now he's on this hill being like, what did I take? So is he thinking that like the doctors were in on it? Is he thinking that everyone's in on it? So then he sends that text and then nothing. His mom doesn't hear from him for the rest of the night.
Oh no.
So she is like in another country. Her child, who's 20, 21, her child he has an issue with his ear. He says people are chasing him. He's on a hill. She can't get to him. She is like, what is going on? And she's like, listen, Lars, I booked you a flight for tomorrow morning. So then tomorrow morning comes around and his flight is scheduled in the afternoon and he goes to the airport very early. I want to say he goes like first thing in the morning. So he calls his mom in the morning and he's like, okay, listen, these people, they're getting too close to me. They are chasing me. And in the morning, he's still convinced. I don't know what happened to him that night. I don't know what he did. But he's like, okay, I'm going to go to the airport and I'm going to go to the clinic and I'm going to see if my ear is okay to fly. Now this, Emmy, is where shit gets crazy. And true crime travelers, I need everyone to pay attention very closely starting now. Because like I mentioned, the events of what happened next have never been solved. From here, Lars's decisions and actions and behaviors would become very perplexing. His behavior increasingly paranoid, and his actions devastating. So, on the CCTV footage that will be on truecrimetravelers.com in the Lars episode, you can find this video. So Lars goes to the Varna airport early so he can go to the clinic to see whether it is safe for him to fly with his ear injury. On the CCTV footage that will be on truecrimetravelers.com in the Lars episode, you can find this video. And you see it begins with Lars walking into the airport, and he has a duffel bag and he has his stuff. And then in the footage, he starts exhibiting some bizarre behavior. The footage shows him in the airport, nervously pacing back and forth, looking over his shoulder repeatedly. His actions are looking like he is panicked, threatened. He looks like kind of like a caged dog, you know? Lars goes and he visits the airport doctor, Dr. Kosta Kostov.
That sounds like a fake name.
Kosta Kostov? Well, you're like named after your fathers.
Oh, okay.
My host father is Emil Emilov.
Oh.
Emilov is from his father's first name. So
yeah,
Lars goes in and he talks to Dr. Kosta Kostov with the fake name. He examines Lars and he advised him that it was safe to fly despite his ear injury. However, during the consultation, Lars's paranoia came back. Lars suddenly became convinced, according to the doctor, that he was in danger. Lars told Dr. Kostov that he had to go to the bathroom, but Lars had another plan. Lars gets up, he opens the door, he walks, and then he runs, and then he sprints through the airport, whizzing between people. Lars sprints out the front door of Varna Airport, running for his life. This is the last time anyone has ever seen Lars in footage that has haunted his mother, everyone that knows him, and everyone that has heard about this case.
Consider me officially haunted. I need to know the answer now. I have so many questions and 2 theories already.
Okay, good.
So,
oh my gosh, don't lose them.
Let's go.
Okay, so next we see Lars. He is running out of the airport terminal, sprints across the parking lot. He heads to a nearby fence on the edge of the parking lot, on the edge of the airport perimeter. And he left behind his luggage, his phone, his clicky phone, his wallet, his passport. He left everything at the airport, Emmy. And something has caused this man to sprint out of the airport, run across the freaking parking lot. And then he jumps the fence. He jumps the fence, which I've heard is like a barbed wire fence. I can't zoom in far enough to see. And on the other side of the fence is a sunflower field. Bulgaria has like the tallest, most vast sunflower fields ever. They're like taller than you. So he really disappears into it, almost like a cornfield. And then that was the last anyone ever saw of Lars Mittank. And despite extensive search efforts by local authorities, there was no further trace of him ever found. And that 500 euros in his bank account never touched. So now the question is, was this super healthy fit man who doesn't do drugs, drinks rarely, was he suffering from side effects from his injury, side effects from medication? Was he undergoing a sudden mental break? Or were there really men in Varna, Bulgaria, hunting him down? Hey guys, it's me, Alexa. Did you know that after college, I left the country and I traveled full-time, nonstop for over 10 years? Through all of my 20s and into my 30s, I was living abroad, riding motorbikes through the jungles of Thailand, tending bar barefoot on islands in Cambodia, teaching English in South Korea, healing my childhood trauma in Bali, house sitting in Costa Rica, and eating tacos de cabeza, trying to order in Spanish in Mexico, all while discovering who I am and what I wanted to do with my life. This is what I want for you. I want you to see that the concept of the real world is fake, and actually, the whole world is real. You don't have to limit your life to the country where you were born. You can build a future, make money, and fall in love with people, passions, and yourself from anywhere on the planet. Grab a copy of my new book, The One-Way Ticket Plan. Find and fund your purpose while traveling the world. You can get this on my website at alexa-west.com, on True Crime Travelers, or your local bookstore. Don't forget about bookstores, you guys. All right, that's it for this little pep talk. Now, back to the episode. Now, Emmy, it is time for you and me and our True Crime Travelers to play detective and figure out what the hell happened.
I am so ready for this.
Before we jump into your theories, because I know you have them, let's start with the video. We're going to break it down. You and me are going to watch it together. And I recommend that if you guys are listening to this and you can, go to truecrimetravelers.com and watch with us. Watch along with us. Go to truecrimetravelers.com and you'll find Lars's episode under episodes and you'll find this video. Okay, Em, let me send it to you.
Should I play with sound?
No
right?
sound. There's no sound on it. So let's play.
Okay.
Kind of like when we are on the airplane together and we hit our screens at the same time.
Okay.
Are you ready? One, two. So we see the first scene is Lars walking into the airport. He's wearing a yellow shirt. He has a backpack. He has a duffel bag. He is walking in calmly. Okay. He's looking over his shoulder. Oh my God. Do you see that? Did you see that at 11? Oh my God. We see him walking in and then very quickly, you guys, he's fucking running.
Dude, but then he stops running. Walking in, looking over the shoulder, then sprinting, running, and then walking again.
I know.
And then running again.
I know. That's something that we have to break down. So
if you're running away from someone, you are running.
You are running. You are running. But the thing is, he was running in this video like he was running from someone. And then you see the CCTV footage, and it is outside of the airport. Once he's outside of the airport, he slows down. It's like he booked it outside of the airport, and then he got outside the airport, and he slows down. And then, if you notice, now that he's outside of the airport, Emmy, if someone was chasing you, you would be looking over your shoulder. He's not looking over his shoulder anymore. He looks normal. He looks like he's just in a hurry to get somewhere. He doesn't look scared, does he?
Also, if there's one place where I would feel safe, it's an airport.
Me too.
I mean, I don't know about Bulgarian airports, but there's officers and security guards and cameras everywhere. If someone screams at an airport, they probably shut it down in 2 minutes.
I know.
You know? Like close the doors, ground the planes.
And you make such a good point because he was at the safest place he could ever be. He had a plane ticket.
Yeah, totally.
So he's there. He's so close to home. He could just stay in the airport, get on that flight, and get home. And I think this is the most heart-wrenching thing because his mother was so close to having her son back. If someone had intervened, or if someone was like, this is a mental break, or if someone was like, well, let's get a police officer to come and help you. If someone had just given a shit, maybe they would have been able to change the course of what happened. So now we're looking at the CCTV and it is an angle where it shows you the entire parking lot. And he runs out towards the parking lot and you can kind of see him do he decides to go left instead of right. He kind of is making up his decisions as he goes. And you know what?
Dime.
You can see him running around 26 seconds. There's no one behind him.
No one.
And there's no one around him. It's honestly quite empty. There's someone pushing a cart with luggage. They're not going to catch up to him. Now he's on the main road and he's walking again. And then, okay, so here's the very last footage you're ever going to see of Lars. You see him going down this road and just disappearing into the distance, into this wooded area where he's jumping a fence and then going into a field of sunflowers. And that's the last time anyone ever saw Lars. It's time for theories. This is really what this case is about, is the theories.
Okay, I have two.
Okay.
My first theory, I know you're saying that people should just chill with the medicine. However, I do think that medicines can cause very extreme and different reactions in people.
But I mean, this is just an antibiotic. It's just an antibiotic.
A ver.
Google it.
What's the name of?
Go Google it. This particular antibiotic people have looked into this. It's been done. People have like gone down this rabbit hole, being like, was it the medication? And it always comes back to, no, it was just an antibiotic that behaves really nicely with your body. What'd you find?
The first thing that popped up in Google, like I wrote, hallucinations from antibiotics. The antibiotics most frequently associated with hallucinations are cephalosporins.
Oh no!
And the sulfa drugs. Again, the effect is more common in patients taking multiple medications.
Okay, but that's the thing. That is the thing, is it was he mixing it with something? And he's a healthy guy. What could have he been mixing it with?
Viagra?
I don't think a 21-year-old is taking Viagra, Emmy.
No, wait. Ignore that. But yeah, it says like antibiotics most frequently associated with hallucinations are cephalosporins. Again, the effect is more common in patients taking multiple medications. It's uncertain why they can cause hallucinations, but numerous patients report documenting disturbing hallucinations or vivid nightmares associated with taking antibiotics.
I have been Emmy'd. I have been Emmy'd.
You have been Emmy'd, yeah. So I mean, it can be a thing. And my theory number 2 is that also that ear, like punch to his ear. What if it was not just an eardrum, like a pierced eardrum? No one ever, like, he didn't have a CT scan or anything. What if there was like head trauma and that really affected like his cognitive abilities? Or maybe it was like a mix of both, like some kind of like developing head trauma from the punch.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe the punch was harder than we all thought. And I do know this from like diving, that ear issues can, like an eardrum issue can cause vertigo. And vertigo is one of the worst feelings ever, you guys. It makes you off balance. It makes you feel like you're almost underwater when you're walking. It makes everything feel disorienting. You get dizzy. And then combined with the pain and possible side effects from the medication, there could be confusion and anxiety, which could have led to the irrational behavior and sudden departure from the airport. Well, man, now that you've told me about these antibiotics, I guess it's just that, on the internet, so many people, this has been a case that has been gone over and over and over and over. And people don't ever just stop at the antibiotics. They're just antibiotics. So let's go on to just like some other theories. We can say that theory is probably the easiest theory, like the most straightforward theory.
Come on, it's the strongest so far.
Okay, mija.
Let's see if it holds up.
I mean, yeah. Another theory is something that we should talk about. A lot of our readers are always worried about is sex trafficking, human trafficking, organ harvesting. And that is one thing that people come and ask me about often is like, what about sex trafficking? What about human trafficking? What about organ harvesting? And I've said it before, and I write about this in my book, The One-Way Ticket Plan, Find and Fund Your Purpose While Traveling the World, that the true but fucked up reason why you don't have to worry about this is that trafficking goes after vulnerable people that no one is going to care about, that they have gone missing. They are usually going after, let me put it this way. In Bulgaria, if someone is going to traffic you, they're going to traffic a Bulgarian, or they're going to traffic a Romi person. And a Romi person is like the minority population we have in Bulgaria. That is who they're going to traffic. They are not going to traffic a German tourist. That would be absolute hell, not only for tourism, but, the mafia, they do have to report to people too. Like this would be, now you're messing with like prostitution money. Now you're messing with alcohol money. You can't mess with tourism. That is why being a tourist is usually pretty safe. And that is why I was able to run around Bulgaria, being a little, I really ran around like Bulgaria, not like Varna and Sofia, like the villages, the cities, like where the shit happens. And I've seen a lot. And I used to work in what is called a dom za deca, which is other people would call it an orphanage, but these kids have parents, and their parents are in prison for prostitution, for drugs, for illegal activity, all this kind of stuff. Okay. I know this world, and I can tell you they're not coming after the tourists. So we're going to just scratch that one out. Okay. I do not think it's organ harvesting or human trafficking. He doesn't fit the profile. And then the other theory is that he was right, and that those football hooligan high school kids hired their cousin and his friends to go beat him up, to stalk him, to try to get money from him. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's always a possibility, but I think if someone had indeed been chasing him, we could have probably seen it, or at least seen something suspicious at the airport.
We would have seen someone. And what was the end game? Just to fuck with him?
And also, I think they would have caught him. He wasn't also like hiding very well. Like, hey, mom, I'm at a hill. Like, it doesn't really sound that he was doing a great job at staying hidden.
If they wanted him, they would have got him.
I mean, it's like that kind of like really erratic behavior that makes absolutely no sense. If you're like in a sketchy hotel and you see people outside your window, you stay in. You kind of like lock the door and block it with a chair, something. But you don't go...
Stay in your hotel. He did the opposite of what I would have done. I wouldn't have left my hotel room and gone outside. I wouldn't have left the airport and gone outside, which means that there's probably no one chasing him. It was probably a mental break. And you know what? Mental breaks happen in your 20s a lot.
Well, they do say, I mean, not like they say, it's confirmed that the brain doesn't really finish developing until you're 21. So that's why in many countries, the legal age for drinking and blah, blah, blah is 21.
Oh, I didn't know that. Listen to this, Emmy. According to the American Psychiatric Association, mental illness can occur at any age, but 75% of all mental illness begins by age 24.
24. I was not expecting that.
24. So he was in the prime age to have a mental break. He's in another country. He's hit, and maybe it was just all coming, and it just all came to a head here. Now, it doesn't matter, at this point, all these things that led up to him. We could go in circles and circles and speculate why this happened, but now it is important to focus on where is Lars, and if he was indeed having a mental break, what happened to him? What became of him? Did he just stay in the sunflower field? I don't think so, because guess what? On the other side of that sunflower field is the highway. And in Bulgaria, hitchhiking is very common. It's very normal. I think he got over that fence, and I think he probably got back into he was coming in and out of normal state of mind and having a break. I think he was able to get in someone's car and they drove him somewhere. I think he hitchhiked. I think he left the location. I think eventually, and his mother also thinks this, I think that he has experienced some kind of memory loss. I think he's lost touch of reality. And I think that he is somewhere in the world on the street homeless.
I think that is a very possible theory. Which makes me wonder, why isn't his photo plastered all over the world?
Well, beards.
Oh, shit.
When he leaves the airport, he's looking fresh and clean and like Chad Michael Murray. But he gets disheveled. His clothes get dirty. He grows a beard. He grows fuzzy hair. His skin starts to get weathered. You can change, the way you look very, very quickly. Now, I will say that there has been a beautiful silver lining on this entire case. It kind of gives me hope that he's probably still alive, and his mother feels the same way. His mother, Sandra, is a badass mom. Unlike the last episode, if you haven't caught the last episode, you guys, Scarlet Keeling in India, make sure you check that out on truecrimetravelers.com. Lars's mom is a badass. This is Sandra. And Sandra has tirelessly searched for her son, traveling to Bulgaria, of course, but also traveling to various countries and following every lead, no matter how faint. She has started using social media to look for her son. And something really amazing has happened in the community of missing people. If anyone is traveling and they see someone who they think might be Lars, they would send it to Sandra and they'd be like, is this Lars? And Sandra would follow through. She would see this person who's clearly a homeless person who maybe had a mental break that could be fitting Lars's predicament, and she'll dive deep. And because of this, Sandra She has discovered many missing people around the world during this journey and has been able to link them back to their families. Most notably, I have chills talking about it. Most notably, there's this case of there was a man in Brazil. Someone found this man in Brazil. They're like, this guy looks out of place. So they took photos. It got back to Sandra. And while it was not Lars, it turns out that it was a man missing from British Columbia who had a mental break. And it's thought that he hitchhiked from BC and walked all the way down to Brazil. I mean, he had lost his mind. He didn't know where he was, who he was, where he was going. And because of Sandra's efforts, he was finally reunited with his family.
What a badass. Okay, so there's hope.
I know. So, there is hope. I really do think there's hope. I really do. I mean, and one part of me is like, okay, if they didn't find his body that day, right, then he is either wandering around. He is one of these invisible people that you walk by in a city that you're like, oh, that's just another homeless person. Or something bad did happen to him and his body was put somewhere that we're not going to find. And if that happened, I would honestly say that was a separate incident, not even related to this one.
Again, like a hit and run or something.
Yes, I do not think Lars died that day.
Me neither.
So we're still here. At the end of all of this, we're still here at the unsolved nature of this disappearance that continues to baffle the true crime community, the world. I mean, just even if you're not in true crime. So I guess that is really unsatisfying, but that brings us to our travel lesson of the day. I don't have one. Do you have one? Tell us.
I would say that the travel lesson for this episode would be no one stays behind alone. If they're good, they're living life, maybe they met someone. That's fine. They can stay behind solo and continue their adventure solo. But if they're going through something, even if it's illness or maybe they lost their passport, whatever, if anything has happened to them, you don't leave them behind alone. So, and when you're like in a far country, it also sucks being sick and alone in a foreign country, right?
Mm-hmm. I know that Lars looked like a big, strong, big boy. And they're like, oh, I mean, they did say, hey, we'll stay with you. And he's like, no. But yeah, if you and I were traveling together and you had this amazing opportunity and you're like, I'm going to stay back, I'd be like, go solo travel girl, go. But if you were like, I am in pain, I'm on this medication, I'm going to stay in a hotel room, I would just be like, I'm going to stay with you. Like, I'm not leaving you here. I think that's a good travel lesson in me. And on that note.
Okay, so where are we going next week?
Next week, we are going to the most magical island on Earth. We're going to the island where me and Emilia met, the island where we write the #1 guidebook, the island where we have a lot of friends, a lot of experiences, where we had spiritual awakenings as well as late night getting drunk till 3 a.m. ings. And if you follow us, you know exactly what we're talking about. And if you don't, then we'll see you next week. Bye. This podcast delves into true crime cases, and we want to remind our listeners that all individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The opinions expressed here are solely those of myself and Emilia. We strive to research thoroughly and provide accurate and up-to-date information, but please be aware that some details may evolve over time. We encourage you to do your own research and verify the information presented. Thanks for listening.
That sounds like a fake name.